The Crossett Research Center and Experimental Farm Forestry Studies. About 20% of all forest land in the Crossett Branch territory was owned by farmers and other small non-industrial ownership. The average per farm was about 30 acres, and, because there had been little or no market for products from such woodlands, most farmers considered it as so much wasteland. At best, logs could be sold from a given area at 40 to 60-year intervals, and clearcutting of the stands was common practice. To get farmers and non-industrial timberland owners interested in forestry, some major changes had to be made. It would be necessary to get rid of most of the weed and cull trees, and to thin the thick patches of good trees to give the reserve stems a chance to grow at an acceptable rate. In most cases, it would be necessary to increase the growing stock. Perhaps the major necessary change was to make harvests and to obtain returns from the tree crop at relatively short intervals. Could this be done? Since farmers generally obtained returns from their row crops at yearly intervals, the researchers decided to find out if annual returns could also be obtained from forest farming. Consequently, one of the better stocked 40-acre shortleaf loblolly pine upland hardwood areas on the experimental forest was selected for study. Results obtained on such land might well indicate the possible returns one might get from woodlands. Once they were put in good growing condition and stocking was built up, this area was called the Good Farm Forestry 40. The second area selected for study contained 34 acres of the same pine hardwood type as the Good 40 but was much more typical of the average farm woodland. It was poorly stocked with pine, many of which were of poor quality. It also had an abundance of cull and low-grade hardwoods up to 24 inches in diameter. Fig. 24. Annual harvests began on the Good 40 in 1938 and on the Poor 40 in 1939. To build up stocking on the latter area, the annual harvest was limited to approximately 50% of growth for the first 13 years. By that time, stocking had increased to the point that removal of more of the growth was desirable. Consequently, the annual cut was gradually increased to a volume nearly equal to the growth. The annual cut from the Good 40 was each year roughly equal to the annual growth. Fig. 25. From 1938 to 1968, 30 annual harvests were made from the poorly stocked 34-acre tract and 31 were made from the well-stocked area. The number of pine trees, at the time management started on the understocked area, averaged 68 per acre in the 4 to 12-inch size class and 17 in the 12-inch and larger class. Total cubic volume for trees of all sizes averaged 11.5 cords per acre. This volume included 2,341 board feet (doyle) of sawlog size material. Over the 30-year period, 148 trees per acre were marked for cutting, 43 of which were of sawlog size. Over the same period, 7,420 bd (fort) of logs, 12.1 cords of pine pulpwood, and 4.7 cords of hardwood products were removed from each average acre. At the end of the 31 years, the Poor 40 contained 145 trees per acre in the 4 to 12-inch class and 32 in the 12-inch and larger class. Stocking of pine of all sizes averaged 23.1 cords per acre, and of this 5,323 bd (fort) was in the sawlog sizes. Fig. 26. On the Good 40, original stocking of pine trees averaged 102 per acre in the 4 to 12-inch class and 30 in the 12-inch and larger class. Cubic volume of pine trees of all sizes averaged 21.2 cords per acre. This volume included 5,074 bd (fort) (doyle) of sawlog size material. Over the 31-year period of management, 91 trees per acre were marked for cutting, 36 of which were of sawlog size. Over this period, 12,160 bd (fort) of pine logs, 11.1 cords of pine pulpwood, and 5.7 cords of hardwood products were removed from each average acre. After the 31 years, the Good 40 contained 119 trees per acre in the 4 to 12-inch class and 30 in the 12-inch and larger class. Stocking of pine of all sizes averaged 23.9 cords per acre, and of this there was 7,910 bd Fort. In the sawlog sizes, Fig. 27. Over the last 15 years of the study, growth averaged better than 430 BD. Fort. Doyle. Per acre per year on the good 40 and 530 on the poor 40. The results from this study demonstrate the excellent possibilities of managing small tracts of loblolly shortleaf pine under the selection system for good growth and returns. These two areas had become the most famous farm forestry forties in the country. Truck logging. The use of trucks for the hauling of logs from the woods to the railroads and mills was rapidly increasing in 1938. Fig. 28. However, the method of loading these trucks left much to be desired. When an empty truck returned to the woods, one of the teams of horses used in skidding was called in to do the loading. This was very slow and tied up the truck for upwards of 30 minutes per load. Al Jacobson, forester for the Crossett Lumber Company, had some ideas on how to use the truck more effectively. He drew up plans for, and had built, some portable heavy metal trailer holding devices on which the log trailer could be quickly detached from the truck and held in place while being loaded. Fig. 29. In the meantime, as soon as a given truck was free from its empty trailer, it could hook on to a previously fully loaded one and be off to the mill or dumping grounds in a few minutes. Fig. 30. The researchers assisted in the development and testing of this equipment. Until the middle of 1938, it was considered unthinkable to expect that logging trucks ever could effectively deliver enough logs, and at a uniform enough rate, to meet the daily demand of a large sawmill such as at Crossett. The local foresters and some of the Woods Supervisory Force thought that they could do this if they only were given an opportunity to try it, because the cost of the railroad logging engines, loaders, log cars, and railroad personnel, still in use to assure an even flow of logs to the mill, was so great, it was decided to give the complete truck operation a trial at Crossett in 1939. And although there were some hitches, the use of trucks and an improved road system made it possible to supply upwards of 100 mbd Fort per day directly from the woods to the mill. Railroad logging was done. Fig. 31. This was a great day for forestry and good forest management. It meant that light selection cuttings could be made from the generally understocked second growth stands, and although the harvesting might be in progress at many different locations, the flow of logs was sufficient to maintain full-time operation of the mills. It meant that the light partial cuttings would produce logs of good average size, ones that were profitable to the mills. It also meant that the selectively cut stands could be counted on to produce greater cuts of good logs at repeated short intervals. This essay is based on the work of R. Reynolds, The Crossett Story, The Beginning of Forestry in Southern Arkansas and Northern Louisiana. All credit for the original research and findings goes to him. This essay is intended to summarize and present his findings in a format accessible to the general public. The information was found in what we are calling the Ovid Switzer papers, which we currently have on loan.